którą stronę będziemy zwracali się
Polish
w
Foreign
polityce
Minister Radosław Sikorski spoke about this today, about the government's point of view during his exposé in the Sejm. How did the presidential palace react, especially when it comes to Minister Sikorski's words about a strong Europe and the need to strengthen the relations with the United States? But, and here's a quotation, "We cannot be suckers in these relations." How would this look against the backdrop of the still heated conflict over ambassadors? Today I'm checking this. The Polish Sejm, the annual exposé to present the priorities of Polish foreign policy for the whole year. The president is listening to the speech. Radosław Sikorski talks about the Polish raison d'etat, the role of the Polish-American alliance, and the strength of the European community within the EU and NATO. But more about that, and I quote, losers, the opposition, internal struggles with political opponents, and simply patriots.
Wyobraźmy sobie,
let's imagine a weak or dismantled European Union. Outside its structures, a poorer Poland and a heavily armed Germany ruled by a nationalist right wing. Is that what you really want? According to the head of the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, nationalism is about questions concerning Poland's interest in the European Union community, questions about the shape of agreements, sovereignty in creating its own laws, regulations and shaping revenues. There was no shortage of evidence of love for the European Union.
Czy właściwą odpowiedzią na
Would
niedostatki
Pole exit or even the dissolution of the EU be the right response to the shortcomings of the European Union? Just as right as throwing a car away for scrap, just because the suspension requires servicing. Except that no one is kicking Poland out of the EU, nor is anyone questioning the sense of Poland's presence in the EU. The right wing is simply talking about assertiveness. I found Minister Sikorski's speech lacking in assertiveness towards the European Commission. Minister Sikorski admitted that the chassis of the car called the European Union is breaking down, to use his words. But I would like to see greater support from the government in repairing the European Commission's activities. It was impossible not to notice the tenderness with which the minister speaks about the European Union and how relatively coolly and reservedly he speaks about the United States. He bluntly calls those who care about the alliance suckers, which is not a term used in diplomatic language. Can we be sure that the interests of the United States will always be the same as those of Poland? We have been and will continue to be a loyal ally of America, but we cannot be suckers. Donald Tusk is delighted. It is also worth realizing that we are doing everything we can to save as much money as possible from the National Reconstruction Plan. Little is said about this, but the delay caused by Law and Justice, the fact we did not receive this money for years, means that we have very little time to use it. Nothing to add, nothing to take away. Minister Sikorski not only pointed out the strategic direction, Berlin and France, which control the EU, but also proved once again how reluctant he is to maintain relations with the United States. Although they are important, he does not treat them as friendly. The European Union has been Sikorski's first choice for years. In March 2022, shortly after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, he posted a message on Twitter saying that he also wanted to go to Kiev. However, he was waiting for permission from the European Parliament. This is also a signal not so much to the US as to political patrons in the European Union. It is also worth noting here that the European establishment's idea is not to push out the United States completely, but to ensure that the United States has no decision-making power in Europe. However, it is still possible to benefit from some military support from the United States. Sikorski is implementing Berlin's policy, and the US wants to break up this German-Russian pact. The founder of NATO said that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization was created to keep the Russians at bay and the Germans under control. Just as the institutions from which 50 ambassadors were dismissed without the consent of the previous president, Andrzej Duda, remain out of control. The current president, Karol Nawrocki, has not approved their successors. We're at the stage where there was a proposal from Deputy Prime Minister Sikorski, my clear counter-proposal, a longer conversation, and we're at the stage where Minister Sikorski, if he is ready to compromise, may reach that compromise, and I am waiting for Minister Sikorski's response. But Sikorski's answer is unchanged. Once again, I appeal to President Nawrocki to sign the applications for ambassadorial appointments in accordance with the law. The law has not changed, so is there not a single candidate among the 49 who meets the requirements? However, there were no proposals for solutions to the most pressing issues for Polish international policy. We did not learn from your speech what budgetary policy Poland intends to pursue in the European Union in the coming years. What climate policy? What policy for regaining competitiveness? Treaty reforms? Expansion of digital sovereignty? We did not learn this. What we did learn, however, is that you consider Eurosceptics, nationalists, and think tanks publishing reports with specific proposals for institutional reform in the area of treaties or migration policy to be your enemies. A retreat from the United States. This is what was clearly outlined during the 2-hour speech, from a country where the lack of a plenipotentiary ambassador is clearly visible.